On episode 10 of Widnes Rugby Chat in 2024, we talk about the big decisions from Widnes' game against Featherstone at the weekend, and hear from Warrington dual-reg forward Lucas Green on his time at the club and how it's been for him playing for 5 different clubs this season so far. John Lawless catches up with Alan Coleman to discuss all the big talking points from that game with Featherstone, and we answer your questions as submitted via the Widnes Rugby League fans Facebook page.
Alan, it was a frustrating game to watch from the commentary box. From your angle, it must have been extremely frustrating.
Yeah. Poor, mate. It's weird. We're not poor, but we just completed then in good ball at 28%. And we've only lost with 8 points against the Featherstone team. If everything goes right and we're smart, we run 30 points in. And we've learned a valuable lesson. We've got to execute better. That's not normally us. We're really good at that. And just really frustrating because, it was a big game and we just didn't bring a big performance.
Was there a bit of a lack of patience, perhaps, near the opposition line, do you think?
Yeah, I just feel, 25 minutes ago and we're throwing ball everywhere and, we're 6 points behind and just calm down, be composed. And normally we've got players who are really composed, and fortunately today there wasn't.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of controversial moments in the match, wasn't there? I know you felt that at least one of those sin bins for Featherstone might have been on another day a red card.
100% it's a red card. If he doesn't get banned this week, well, I'll be very, very surprised. We watch it back on our playback and it's direct contact to the head. Direct. If that's on TV, on Sky, it's a red. End of. But unfortunately, they've not got that facility. And unfortunately, I don't feel they had the staff today to cope with that.
In terms of you're not scoring any points today, I thought Featherstone, one way of putting it might be the control the play the balls very well. Another way of putting it might be that there was a lot going on in those play the balls that were making them very slow.
Well, if that's how they want our game played, they'll be turning off in hundreds and droves. Because I don't want the coaching a game of rugby if that's the speed of the ruck. That was a disgrace today. I'm sorry. I told him at half time, nothing changed. I'll be very surprised if whoever assesses him and does his review with him says they're fine. Because if they're fine, well, we all need to change the game.
In addition, the game was slow in many other ways as well, with constant stoppages, several minutes being taken out of play all the time, and that perhaps affected your team's ability to get on a bit of a roll and get any rhythm.
Yeah, they brought a rule in at the beginning of the year to be quick, so the rucks are quick, the game's quicker, so it's a spectacle for people to watch. We're athletes, everything's played quick. Somebody mustn't have got the memo today, because that was the slowest game I've been involved with. And all that does is frustrate people. Now, if that's a game plan, that's great. But can we all do that? Because if I do that next week, I'll be penalised as well. So we just need some clarity on it. I'll be asking certainly Monday morning what clarity is on that.
Who do you think went well for you today then, Alan? I know it was a frustrating afternoon, but there was plenty of effort.
I just said it to the lads then, effort was there. They always get effort from this group. Composure wasn't, smartness wasn't, and how we completed our sets wasn't, but the effort, they score an interception and they kick a penalty goal. Other than that, they don't break out line. We look comfortable defending today. We were just really frustrated with the ball. So I think Jordan Johnson was good again in the middle. He's just constant, 80-minute man. Everyone's effort. I can't knock effort, like I say. I'm really happy with the effort, but just not happy with the outcome.
Would Matty Fozzard have made a difference for you if he'd have been available for you for today to go on the bench? Because the play the balls were slow. Would he even have been able to get out of there?
It probably won't suit his game, that's for sure. But just having him on the field would have helped because he's a try threat, he's a run threat, and JJ wouldn't have had to do the full game. And I'm not saying he can't do that, but it's very difficult in that heat. But he did it, and that's him. He's Mr. No Nonsense. He leads from the front.
Big game next week, Wakefield away. They don't lose much, do they, in this level of rugby league? I suppose you're going to have to improve, but hopefully, you never know, Wakefield might have other things on the mind.
Well, if we get this ref we've had today, it'll suit us because we can slow everything down. But no, it's a big ask, we know that, but we're going to go and give everything we've got like we've done in every week. We'll probably look at a couple of players we've signed and have a look at them because it's important we see what they're about. But yeah, excited to go. Always good to play the best team, and they're obviously head and shoulders at the moment.
And in terms of the players who weren't available to you today because of injury, anyone possibly available for selection next week?
Fingers crossed. I'd love Sam and Rodri back, and Falls back. So yeah, we just have to see. If they're not right, they're not right. But if they are right, we're certainly a few headache selections because I'll have a bigger squad to choose from.
Alan, as ever, thanks for talking to us.
No problem.
Cheers,
Thank you very much.
So, disappointing defeat in the end for Widnes against Featherstone. Both sides probably could have played till Christmas and not scored. Mike, it was one of those sorts of matches.
Yeah, I think Christmas has been a bit generous, James. I was thinking first kind of thing I wanted to brush over, and first thoughts after the game was thank God that wasn't an advertisement for Championship Rugby League. I think both coaches will be disappointed with what was served up on such a good afternoon. It was almost a wet weather game of rugby, wasn't it? In the sun, in the piping hot heat. But yeah, a massive opportunity missed, I think. And what made it worse was, despite the refereeing decisions, which we'll go into later, and I don't have any interest on blaming the defeat on them. We will talk about them in isolation, but despite them and the controversy over them, the game was well there for the taking if the execution was right, and it just wasn't, unfortunately.
I was a bit surprised because I thought Widnes moved the ball wide pretty early on. I think there was one of the first sets that they had. They pushed the ball to the right hand side, and I think Mike Butt got away on the right. And I thought they were gonna run at Connor Jones a bit more. He was playing in the centres, whereas traditionally he's been at dummy half. And I thought they might have tried to exploit that a little bit more. And for whatever reason, they didn't. Yeah, it was a frustrating, like you say, a massive missed opportunity, especially with Toulouse losing, Sheffield losing as well. It was a big chance for Widnes to, they could have got within 2 points of Toulouse. Toulouse still got to come to the Halton Stadium. Sheffield still got to come to the Halton Stadium as well. So yeah, a bit of a missed opportunity. Let's go into the decisions then. Which one do you want to start with?
Should we start with the crossing one first? I think in the highlights that one was shown first. One hit Ryan Lannon, and the play went behind him, and the inch broke away on the left hand side, south stand side, and the ref pulled it back for an obstruction. What was your thoughts on that?
I had no issues with him giving it, to be honest. To be honest, I'd seen a few people tweeting about it, and I was on that side. It was right underneath me, obviously, where I was commentating from. And at the time, I didn't feel like it was a massive injustice. I don't feel like, having seen the video replay, that it was a massive injustice. I think it was probably a borderline call that, if it probably hadn't been given, Featherstone might have said, how come that wasn't given? I think it was probably a 50-50 sort of call, that, to be honest.
Yeah, do you know what? I did start with that one first because I didn't have a particular good view of it. So
I think it's a bad read.
Here or there, to be honest, for that one, James. And I just with you being on that side, you'd have a better angle of it.
I thought it was a bad read by the defender, to be honest. But at the same time, I think there was probably just enough in it for it to be given. Yeah.
I think the part where it was given, where Lannon's bowled him over, and he's gone to ground, and I think that's the part that's caught the referee's eye, hasn't it? And obviously, I think this decision, it was a 50-50, and I think it's been caught up in the conversation to kind of chuck more wood on the bonfire because of the other two decisions, which we'll come to shortly. Yeah. I agree with that one, a 50-50. And I can't complain too much on that one, I must admit, from what I've seen in the highlights.
I think the main one for me was the intercept try. I think of all the decisions, I think the intercept try one was the one that was probably the worst one. It was a good bit of intent defensive play by Jordan Johnson. He's basically just caught Ben Reynolds off guard. It's meant that Reynolds' pass has gone loose. It's bounced up. Fleming's taken it pretty cleanly, to be honest. There was no juggling around or anything. He's gathered the ball and he's gone. He would have scored. There was no one chasing him. Didn't help the situation that it was a Widnes scrum either. The referee said that there was 2 knock-ons, but I can't really see where there was a Widnes knock-on in it, if I'm honest.
No, and it just reminds me of that, watching it live, like the Tom Gilmore incident, where everybody's baffled when they see the referee's signal, and it'd just be nice sometimes to have a bit of clarity. And I know you're not realistically going to get it unless it's mentioned in the coach's interview after the discussion with the referee afterwards for the fans. But I was sat with somebody who's just come a couple of games and just getting back into it, and just really, really enjoys coming on a Sunday, and main sport is football, but, enjoys coming, and he's looking at me like saying, well, what's happened there? And you can't, as somebody who goes every week, when you're looking at the referee's signal, you're thinking, how can you explain that? When it happened, I thought, because of the impact of the tackle, I thought, oh, it's hit Jordan Johnson's hand, and it's rolled then to Fleming, and he's give it as a knock on. And at that point, I was like, right, okay, where I was sat, fair enough. But then everybody walks back, and then he signals the double knock on. And out of everything, the one thing that didn't happen was a double knock on. It was either a forward pass or a knock on by us from Jordan Johnson's hand, and that was it. And that's clutching at straws, really. Really baffling decision, and yeah, just one of them really. Where as a supporter, you'd just like to understand and get the clarity of the decision, but you probably won't get it.
Yeah, I think it is difficult, the situation with refereeing at the moment. There's not a massive supply chain of them. Clearly, Super League's even struggling to get referees in, which means they're getting fast tracked through. I did think, I don't like to be critical of referees either, but I did think there was probably quite a few instances where there was a lot of, and I'm not criticising the referee for consulting with his touch judges, but there were certainly a few instances I thought where he was, something had happened and it was right in front, and then all of a sudden, 10 seconds later, the touch judge has said something or given something, and then the decision was made, which I thought was the first time I'd really seen it happen that way. The other one was also involving Matt Fleming, was the sin bin for Gadwin Springer. Now, I called this unfortunate at half-time in my tweet, and people jumped on me, as they so often do. My reasoning for saying it was unfortunate was because I felt that Fleming was being tackled from behind by somebody else, and that basically pulled him down to a level where he was going to get contact to the head. And having seen the video, I still stand by that. I think yellow card was the right decision, by the way. I think the yellow card was the right decision. But I can see the argument, well, he wasn't really trying to wrap his arm round, although that is a rugby union rule. He makes contact with the head. Alan Coleman certainly was strongly of the opinion that it should have been a red card. I specifically said, I asked Alan, did the referee give any mitigation? Because I sat in the RFL briefing at the start of the year, and they basically explained that contact to the head, the punishment that they give is dependent on mitigation, and mitigation can be various factors, one of which is if the player is falling, or if the player is being tackled last minute by someone else, and you make contact with the head as a result, that can be seen as mitigation, which effectively then downgrades it from a red card to yellow card. I think whether you agree or not with that assessment, I think what was probably fueling Alan Coleman's frustration was that it wasn't even explained to them why it was only a yellow. That was my interpretation of that situation. It certainly was, trying to be diplomatic here. It was certainly heated, I would say, in the tunnel afterwards, surrounding the officials. But yeah, I think a yellow card in that instance was probably right. You might disagree with me, Mike.
Yeah, I think this one, I think we're going to have to go the other way, because straight away I went red. It was my initial reaction. I had a very good view of it, albeit the other side. And I thought, having watched the highlights, I thought the North Stand's view of the incident was actually better live than the view of the camera that I've seen it again on the highlights. The reason why I went for red was it was direct contact with the head. It was careless. It was reckless. And although I do agree, there was a tackler defending him, already round his legs already, and there is that argument of he is slightly falling. But I think Gadwin Springer, if you're watching him, I think he's got time to alter what he's doing with his shoulder, and I think there's a bit of delay in time. Obviously, the referee doesn't get the beauty of, seeing that he's got to make the decision there and then, I suppose. But my initial reaction was red. And also, he's not just endangered Matty Fleming. He nearly cleaned out his own player as well. And on the podcast a few weeks back, we're talking about how do we protect players? How do we, kind of alter the rules type of thing to protect them and stop head injuries and just protect them a bit more. And I think in a situation like that, the referee should be taking action there. I thought it was deliberate, and I think the cherry on the cake for me as well. I know we're not football, but clearly the fella hadn't learned or listened to the warning, because he did it again 5 minutes from the end.
Yeah, I think it was a late one, wasn't it? That the second one. I think that's not actually the first time I've seen the same player get sin bin twice in a match. Actually, I've seen that happen before. But I think I've seen an interesting few debates or comments on Twitter where someone suggested that had Matt Fleming made a bit more of it, maybe the decision had been different, which in some ways it's a shame that players shouldn't have to play up to get the right decision being made. I don't want to encourage players to roll around pretending they're injured to try and get players sent off, but ultimately it appears that that's what's happening. But I still err on the side of I don't want to be encouraging anyone to do that just because everyone else does it, because I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. But yeah, I think, like I say, I was content with it being a yellow card. I can see why people wanted a red for it. It'll be interesting to see what the match review panel notes say on Thursday, to see whether he gets a ban. I would imagine he probably will get a ban. I think he's probably more likely to get a ban for his second one, to be honest, than that one.
Yeah. No, and something else, James, I'd like to ask you, actually, because we've seen it a few times now, and it's not just Alan Coleman and stuff. It's other coaches as well. We've seen at half time when the players go off the pitch, coaches ready and waiting. And you mentioned it got heated in the tunnel as well. Do you think that helps your case on the day? Because I know you've got to have a conversation of asking questions, but it depends how them questions are asked and what the tone of the conversation is. Because maybe this is why I'm not a referee, but I always think, if I'm getting barraged coming off the pitch straight away, and I've been barraged by the home crowd, I've been barraged by the players on field, and then the coaching staff coming off, sure, it'd be great to see if there's been a study somewhere on it, but Are you realistically then gonna, if there's any 50-50s, be more in favour of swinging it the other way again, or going further and going, do you know what? Sod this for a month for Sundays. I'm getting grief left, right, and centre. What do you think on that?
I think referees will always say they don't care who wins. They don't care what people say or what people think. And to a point, I agree. But like you say, I think even if there's a very small percentage of, like when you go to grounds and the fans are calling for offside all the time, or, you see decisions made, don't you, where there's a forward pass, the whole crowd gives it and they give it. Even if that is only a small percentage swing that takes a decision to 51% over 49%, I do think that there is a little bit of that in it. Would I recommend Alan Coleman goes on the pitch and talks to the referee as he's coming off at half time? No. Do I understand why he's done it? Yeah, probably less so on Sunday than the Halifax one. I certainly think the Halifax one was worth the conversation. There's obviously conversations happen that we're not privy to. You only see that, you only notice that about Alan on Sunday because he's gone out on the pitch. I'm fairly sure that most games, when the players are in the dressing room and the officials are in the dressing room, there's conversations. Certainly in football, the way the football referees sort of deal with it is come and see me at half time, and they've got to knock on the door and go in the room and stuff. You're never going to get away from that. I suppose, yeah, I think it's impossible. You might make the argument that if he comes to you and says you made a mistake here, is he then more likely to give you something because he's thinking, oh, I've made a mistake here. I can't remember the exact moment in the match on Sunday, but there was a decision. I'm trying to think what it was now. There was a decision when something got given against Widnes. It might have been a knock-on or a rip-out or something like that. And then literally the first tackle, Featherstone did something and it was given as a knock-on when I don't think it was a knock-on. And I thought that was one of them where I felt maybe he sort of realised that the previous decision was incorrect. And so he sort of balanced this one out. Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. I don't think you'll ever get a perfect answer to it. But yeah, in terms of other decisions, I've seen some people raise doubts over the penalty that Reynolds kicked. It was offside, and I'll die on that hill. The Featherstone player hacked it on. It hits the back of Matt Fleming and bounces up into Joe Lyons, and he catches it. It was an accidental offside, but it was offside every day of the week, and that's why he kicked the goal. I don't think there was any problems with that one, to be honest.
Speaking of penalties, James, you know what though? Like, I'm not one at all for blaming referees for losing games, and this is a classic example this week of, despite all the controversy, we was the architects of our own downfall with our execution in the opponent's half, because we had plenty of chances after that. But the biggest frustration for me of the whole game and how it was reffed was the amount of penalties. Now, if you're trying to take a kid, or anybody, get somebody new into the game and hopefully gain a fan out of it, for me, you want a referee who lets the game flow a little bit, and it just felt it had got, the game had got away from the referee, and because he'd blew up for one thing, he was blowing up for something else, and that was my biggest frustration. It was so stop-start, it was unbelievable.
There was actually only 14 penalties in the game. I think where it probably got held up, there was a lot of stoppages in the second half. Like, I think the game got stopped 3 or 4 times because Liam Bent had a bloodied nose. And that really suited Featherstone because they had a big pack. They had a lot of time to get their breath back. I think the tackle, the ruck speed was very, very slow. You might argue that, to be honest, I'm almost certain Alan Coleman would argue that there should have been more penalties in the game, because Featherstone were really slowing down the play of the balls. Whether Widnes could have done anything different had Matty Fozzard been playing, I don't know. But yeah, there was, especially in the second half, there was a lot of stoppages, and if you listen to the commentary, it was a point John Lawless made multiple times in the second half, that the game was just stopping to such a pace that it really suited Featherstone, because they could have a set of 6 tackling, then they'd get the breath back, there'd be a bit of a stoppage, and that really played into their hands.
No, definitely. I mean, I'm glad you pointed that out, James, because obviously that's really deceptive, isn't it? When the game stops and starts, obviously everybody in the stands don't have the luxury of jotting down, each penalty as and when it comes. So that's really interesting you mentioned that, but it was a real tough watch. But I'm glad you mentioned that briefly about Matty Fozard, because I don't want to state the obvious, but I felt after 20-25 minutes, it was just a shame, wasn't it? Because it was just waiting for him to speed it up. And I think that was the example on Sunday of Jordan Johnson and Matty Fozard. They're a team, aren't they? They're a team within a team. They're as good as each other. They make each other, better, essentially, but by their own strengths in the game. But what I really thought we missed as well was the 2 back rowers, because I feel they're 2 players. I felt when we was attacking, we was being quite lateral, and what Rodri Lloyd and Sam Wilde do very well is they make diagonal, direct runs that really penetrate through the opponent's line. And what it does is it just takes accountability of defenders, and it frees up people outside. But even if they get the ball themselves and they don't burst through and score, if they half break a tackle, they go down and play the ball really quickly. And I thought, although he had a really good game, Ryan Lannon, I thought there was signs where you probably did see his position probably favoured of being a middle, because I feel when he was getting them balls in the second row position, there was occasions where he was trying to tussle with the defender too much, rather than focusing on, playing the ball quickly and going for the next play, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is interesting because, you mentioned the 2 back rowers, but then Lannon gets man of the match. So,
yeah,
like you say, you probably preferring Lannon. I think sometimes Lannon as well, he gets his arms free, or he might get half free, but you're probably more likely to find an offload in that situation if you're more central. Certainly think if Sam Wilde had played, Widnes probably would have managed to get him better. And that's no disrespect to Max Roberts, who I thought had a decent enough game. But yeah, I think running on the inside, getting that quick play of the ball. I actually thought there was a spell for about 5 minutes towards the end of the second half where Widnes, they managed to speed up the ruck a little bit, and they kept going behind the play of the ball. So they were sort of going to the right of the play of the ball and then passing left. And that seemed to open Featherstone up a couple of times. But whether they left it too late to do that, we'll never know. After the game, I did catch up with Lucas Green, who is on dual registration from Warrington, of course, until the end of the season. We have mentioned him in the previous podcast, so I wanted to put to him what it's like being a dual registration player and playing for multiple clubs in a season. Here's what he had to say. It was a tough game out there this afternoon in the heat and against the big pack. How did you find it?
Yeah, mate, it was tough. I think it was a physical game. They brought a big side, and we knew they were going to come down middle, and that's what they did. So, unfortunately, it didn't go our way. But I thought lads give a real good dig and a real good effort throughout the full game.
How are you finding it at Widnes? Obviously, you've been in the team now a few weeks running. You seem to be growing in confidence and getting used to being around the lads again.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's a good set of lads with some real good coaching staff. I'm learning a lot, and I'm getting some valuable game time as well. Which is nice to get a bit of consistency into me.
Yeah, you were in the pre-season, and then for whatever reason you weren't getting played. Is it weird that you were here pre-season, then you went, and then you've come back, or does that help you a bit?
I reckon it's helped me a bit because I got to know a few of the lads, so going back for these few games it's been easy. I've just slotted straight back in. I already know everyone and all players and stuff, so yeah, it's done me a bit of good already being here.
How hard is it for you as a young player? I think you played for 5 different teams this season. How hard is it for you? Like you rock up at a ground and it's a new set of lads each time. What's that like as a young player?
It's hard, but I just try to look at it in a positive way. I'm young. It's only my first year full time, so I'm just taking it as experience. Week by week, whatever I'm doing, I'm just trying to learn from it. Try to take some notes out of it. So yeah, just try to take the positives out of it.
And the other week, it must have been interesting when I know Daniel O'Corral's only been at Warrington for the last few months, but a bit of a strange one, isn't it, when you're training with someone all week and then you play up against him on a Sunday?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. But yeah, once you cross that white line, you're not friends anymore. Yeah, it's weird, but that's rugby for you. 1 week they're your mate, next week they're your enemy, so it's just got to get used to it.
I seen you getting in the car with him, and did you give him a lift home afterwards? Did you have bragging rights on that car?
Yeah, so because he lives with me in Warrington, so I was just hammering him all the way home.
And obviously things at Warrington going really well under Sam Burgess. How much have you liked working with him? Because of course he's probably a great example of someone of a forward of rugby league modern times.
Yeah, mate. There's no one better to learn from. My position and what career he's had. He's just a role model. Everything he teaches you, everything you learn off him, it's just gold. He's just such a good bloke as well. So he's done me well good this season, learning off him.
And then looking forward now to the rest of the season, you're going to be here most weeks, you would think. Does that enable you to really focus on your game and set some goals for the rest of the year?
Yeah, mate, definitely. It's knowing that I've got that safety net and that reassurance that I know I'm playing each week. It's either Warrington or Widnes. It's a bit easy. I don't have to learn anything new. I just get to bed myself in group a bit more. Get a bit more consistency, just keep playing. So yeah, it's real good for me knowing what I'm doing for the rest of the year.
So thanks to Lucas Green for stopping for a chat. Right, Mike's got a list of questions.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody again for writing them and sending them in. It's really appreciated. We will do our best to get through as many. If there's any that have been sent after the recording, I'll try and include them in next week. So the first one is from Andrew from last week. It was, how is the Pass It On season tickets going, and what is more beneficial, this or giving it to VIP? So I spent a while in the Bridge Suite talking to a few people, and I did bring this up, and the answer was, on the whole, the season ticket initiative, so to speak, has gone really well, really positive. I didn't get official numbers, so that might be something that I'll get fed back to me in a couple more weeks' time. But it's something I think that is going to be made more of a bigger thing, at the end of this season, going into next season, to be built on. Regarding what's best to give it to, it was made crystal clear that the club is absolutely 100% grateful and really wanted to pass on my thanks to you, participating in this. But the reality of the situation is it's all valuable income, and it solely comes down to yourself of which one to choose. I suppose the season tickets, you put in, the benefit of that is you're putting somebody onto the gate. You're potentially getting an extra fan there. However, if you decide to go down the VIPs route, I suppose you're getting entered into prize draws every month, for example. You're getting more information around VIPs, that the updates and the newsletters that get sent to you via email, very transparent, as we've already said on this podcast, but it all goes to the same pot. So I suppose that's just a personal decision of yours. But Andrew, really good, mate, that you're obviously contributing to the season passes and showing an interest in VIPs. So yeah. Thank you very much.
It's a nice segue to mention that VIPs are looking for a new secretary. If anyone fancies putting their hand up to do that, I think Andy Lee's stepping aside. He's done a stellar job, like you say, with the transparency side of things. So I think the Widnes VIPs on Twitter, if you want to get in touch with them, I think there's some information about the job advert, or the volunteer advert, as it was.
So the next one, again, is from last week, but it was sent, and by the time it was sent, we'd already recorded. So then this one's your best position for this one, James. What's the playoff format? I know there's been a bit of talk about this in the weeks building up. So
the playoff format is effectively the same as Super League. I probably jinxed it because I was looking for flights to Toulouse last week as a little bit of a wishful thinking sort of thing. So effectively, first and second go through. They missed the first week. So let's, for argument's sake, say that was Wakefield and Toulouse. You've then got third will play sixth and fourth will play fifth. And then the winners of them two matches would basically play Wakefield or Toulouse away. So I think it's based on the highest ranked team, but where you ranked. So if, let's just say, well, wishful thinking, if Widnes finished third and they won, they would play sixth. If they won, they would then be away to the second place team in the semi-final. So yeah, you want to be finishing in the top four basically to get a home playoff. And that's why, again, that's probably why Sunday was a missed opportunity, because Widnes would have been really secure at this stage of the season, at least in the top four, had they been able to win. If you finish fifth or sixth, you're basically having to win 2 away games to get to the grand final. The grand final will be held at the ground of the highest ranked team. So, the smart money is that it's going to be at Wakefield, I would say. But we've seen it before. If there is an upset, in theory, if Widnes finished third or fourth, it'd need a hell of a run of results, but they could be at home in the grand final. But yeah, so it's the same format as Super League. It's fairly straightforward, or certainly more straightforward than it has been in previous. Top 4 gives you a home playoff no matter what.
Nicely answered. This one, I think it might be from somebody who's maybe just started listening to the podcast, because we did speak about this in one of our earlier episodes, but someone's asked the question nonetheless. Is the potential signing of Ep10 a risk, in your opinion? I'd say it is a risk, but for me, we do need a half who does have a long kicking game, and I think Ep10 does have that. So it is a risk through, I suppose, it not working out for him at Salford and Bradford, picked up a bit of form at Swinton and then went to Featherstone and he's got a ban. So clearly there is a risk to it, but I suppose you're relying on the coach to get the best out of him, I suppose.
He was at the game on Sunday, actually, and it only sort of occurred to me after he'd walked past me that I should have maybe grabbed him. He hasn't. I've had some off-the-record chats with people in recent weeks, and his name hasn't been mentioned to me. So whether it is happening still, who knows? I do think it's a risk. I think I said in the podcast when we did it at the time that if it was a choice between him and Lee Gaskell, I probably would have lent towards Lee Gaskell. I don't think that one's happening either. But let's see what happens. I think Tom Gilmore's been doing an excellent job for Widnes, certainly managing the game. I think actually Joe Lyons has been much better this season. Having whether you want to believe that it was Alan Coleman's choice to have him as the first choice 6, I have no idea whether he was or not. But I think that's really helped him knowing that that shirt is. And the thing with Joe Lyons is he's durable, he works hard, he's always there. Like you say, he's on a massive ban, isn't he? He's like 6-7 game ban or something like that. I'm not saying that you should keep players because they're durable and because they don't get banned or they don't get injured, but it certainly helps if you're able to get them on the field.
Next one, will the club, in your opinion, be happy with their current IMG score?
They seemed pretty happy when it was announced back in October time, whenever it was, and it was talked about a little bit at that. There was a members event, wasn't there, where it was discussed, and the club seemed fairly happy with it there. I think the worry for me was identifying just where Widnes could improve that score. Clearly, on-field performance was one where there was clear room for improvement. I think Widnes' last few finishes have been 8th, 9th and 10th, well, which is technically 20th, 21st, 20, whatever it is. So clearly the on-field performance is one where they can move. Now, how many points that means in real terms is hard to say, but if Widnes could have a few seasons where they finish top 4, maybe even win the 1895 Cup, it will boost the score on that thing. I think what concerned me with it was I couldn't quite see where else Widnes could pick up extra points. The crowds would have to be. I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that Widnes managed to sneak in above the 3,000 threshold for average crowds, which gives you an extra half a point. Now, clearly, if crowds decrease, they're going to lose half a point for that. Ultimately, if crowds do decrease, that means your percentage usage of the stadium decreases, which again contributes to your score. There's the fact of, your TV figures and stuff like that. It's not going to get any better really than what it is now. There was another one, and then the one about population was a frustrating one, where I think the population of Halton, which is what Widnes is judged on, is slightly lower than the threshold for an extra. I don't know if it was half a point or a quarter of a point or something like that, but that won't. There's physically nothing Widnes can do about that until 2031. So I think Widnes will be. Widnes were happy with the score in October. I would probably prepare yourself for it staying either the same or even going down slightly. But I think the bottom line is that I think 15th or 16th in the rankings is probably about right for Widnes where they are at the moment. I think I can't see, if you look at the teams above them, I just can't see where Widnes can, without being in Super League, because of the benefits that has. I just can't see how they can pull them points back. The only other area that you maybe have an influence on is the finance. So if all of a sudden you had a money man willing to write off loads of money, you can add a few points in. But at the members event, I seem to recall Stuart Murphy was quite positive about how Widnes had scored in the finances, which is good from a sustainability point of view. But yeah, so yeah, I think unfortunately, I actually, we talked about it a little bit, didn't we, with Matt Shaw the other week. I think Widnes are ultimately going to be 15th, 16th, 17th ranked.
Yeah.
And that's about as good as we can hope for.
Yeah, no, I think taking it into context and how disappointing on field it's been before this season, I think you have to be happy with that, don't you? I think, and I think we're obviously quite fortunate, other areas are better than other clubs who have, consistently been better than us on the field, certainly in recent times. I think the big thing that I'd like to see for me in the off season and stuff, we need a real push in season ticket sales, because they took a bit of a blow before the season started. There was quite a lot of people a bit demoralised, and Alan's come in and we've been a lot better on the field this year. Where we finish is yet to be seen, but up to this point it's been a far more enjoyable experience. It feels more of a club again together, in the Bridge Suite after the games. The atmosphere is a lot better. So I think for me, I think it's really important. There's a massive push by the club for enticing and engaging with, the supporters to bump them season tickets up, and, just do little initiatives and little advertisements here and there, to boost that and really jump on that bandwagon, I think. I've got one here for you, James. How many active board members are there, and do you think we are looking for any more investment? Now, I'd say with the recent addition of Matt Taylor, nearly said Matt Shaw then, Matt Taylor, I'd say that they are actively looking, it would seem, as long as the right person, come along. But what are your...
Well, I think the bottom line is that clubs are always open to the right people coming on board, and I'm sure Widnes are no different to that. There's currently 5 different people listed as directors of the club, and that's Stuart Murphy, the chairman, Roger Harrison, Rod Steele, Matt Taylor, who you mentioned, and then Joy Morton, who was appointed sometime last year as part of the partnership between the RFL and inclusive boards, which is something to do about increasing diversity and boardrooms. I think Joyce from Wrexham University works at Wrexham University, which perhaps explains why there's some sponsorship deals in place with them. So those are the people listed. Of course, Chris Price, the former chairman who stepped down last year sometime, he was, I think, one of the main shareholders at the time, and I think his shares sort of got shared between three of the other directors at one point. There was certainly a separate share company that got set up, I think, between a few of them, which was perhaps to incur. They might well still be an ongoing situation. But certainly the five that are there, certainly see Roger, Rod, and Stuart at plenty of the games, or pretty much all the games, to be honest. So they are there. So yeah, I think the message is, if there's any millionaires listening, I'm sure the club is open to a conversation.
Absolutely, jump on board. That's the message. Two more, James. Quite interesting. One's bear with me one moment. It's quite lengthy, this one. Having had a season where one of Coleman's signings has not played a single minute, and two, both who came here with injury issues, have now got potentially career-ending injuries of the same nature. Why is it we have signed at least one player for next season with a history, in brackets, retired due to injury, and a history of injuries, and two who are above 30? How is this building for the future?
Who are we talking about?
Well, from what I can work out, I think the one who hasn't played would be Martin Riley.
Yeah. I get he's on about Riley, Gregson, and Langtree, but who's he on about for next season?
Yeah, I think this might relate to Gavin Benyon and Lewis Hall, who was in the media. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, Lewis Hall is Lewis Charnock. He's changed his name, so for people who aren't familiar with Lewis Hall, that's who it is.
He must live not too far. I mean, he played well for Swinton against Widnes of the week. He must live not far from me, because I seen him walking his dog actually the other week, before these rumours came out. I mean,
lads to believe, I think.
Yeah, I'd question. First off, I'd question whether either Martin Riley or Danny Langtree were Alan Coleman signings. That'd be my first observation to that. They are hoping that Martin Riley's back before the end of this season, which would be nice. It'd be like a new signing. And I mean, in theory, he's almost a new signing for next season. I think bottom line is, the way rugby is at the moment is you're going to find it very difficult to find players who don't miss games through injury. I think Alan Coleman's on record saying he wants 26 to 27. So if you get someone like Gavin Benyon who plays half the games, and then you've got someone of the same calibre who plays the other half, then I think you'd be fairly happy with that. I think there's very few players these days that you can rely that they're going to be there week in, week out, and ultimately them players are in high demand. So and there's not a massive player pool either.
No.
There's not a massive player pool available. And it's going to be interesting to see how it rolls, because of course Alan Coleman he was only appointed, well, it's probably this time last year, wasn't it? And you would imagine that quite a bit of the recruitment had been done by then. So it will be interesting to see how different it ends up this year, with him having his input, having the trust of the board, of course, and also how he factors in the dual-reg situation. If it feels difficult. You take Lucas Graham, for example. He was in with Widnes in pre-season, but he couldn't get in the Widnes team because Widnes had enough players. But then when Widnes suffer injuries and they want him in, they couldn't get him back in. On the flip side, if you build your squad thinking, right, we're definitely going to have someone like Lucas Green, and then all of a sudden Warrington get injuries and he ends up playing for them, you're short. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword on that side of things. But you can't just sign young players all the time. I think you need the experience. And I think over the past few years, some of Widnes's better players have been, Shane Grady. I know Shane Grady's come back to provide numbers this year. He was probably in my opinion, in the top 3 players for Widnes last season. And Steve Tyrer, before he retired, he was the same. So I don't see any issues with recruiting players in their 30s, to be honest.
No, certainly not in the forwards. I mean, I think certainly the age thing and building for the future. I think that end to that question was really interesting, and I just think back to what Matt Shaw was saying about Halifax and obviously Widnes and the similarities, where it's like, where as a club do you see yourself? Do you see yourself, wanting to be knocking on the door for Super League in the future, or right now is it about being the best you can be and improving steadily year on year? And I think what we need to do as a club, in my opinion, and certainly because there's no money man around, as boring as this may sound, I think you've got to finish as high as you can, and you've got to first and foremost be focusing on trying to be the best part-time rugby club.
Yeah,
and you've got to pad out your squad with experience to do that. I mean, you look at Featherstone, you look at Sheffield, they have players in that age bracket. Now, you can have a conversation of are they better than what we're bringing in? Possibly not. That comes down to personal preference and opinion. But you've got to have experience, and quite rightly, you've pointed out Shane Grady, Steve Tyrer being 2, Tom Gilmore, the age he is now, he's 29, 30. That there are have been our best players, and they fall into that age category.
You can't build a team thinking about Super League. It's just, it's a complete fallacy now. You can't get promoted. You can't get promoted. You've got to work on the basis you can't get promoted. So what's the point? There's no point in building a team to compete in Super League, because you're just not going to get there unless you know that you're going to... Wakefield's team this season is only how it is because they're pretty certain they're going to be in Super League next season. If they didn't have a big money man and they weren't sure of that, it wouldn't be anything like that. I think you can't recruit young players who you think who might be good for Super League, because they'll just get picked off. Like Tyler Dupree played 8 games for Widnes, got picked off. Dion Cross played a season a bit for Widnes, got picked off. So it's pointless having a recruitment strategy around that. York are doing it slightly different, where they're picking up players at like 18, 19 who've been cast off, who probably wouldn't be on the Super League radars, and they're trying to get them over a 4 or 5 year period. But that's because they've got a 5-year plan to get into Super League. Whether it'll work, I don't know. But I think you've just got to recruit a team for the season ahead. The other thing is as well, is that the way the state of contracts now, how many players have got... There's not many players who get more than 2 years anyway. So even if you built a good team now, in 2 years, they'll all be out of contract and want to go anyway. Whereas... Yeah, so I think it's difficult for you to... I don't see any value really now in the current climate of building a team for Super League, because, if Widnes got the nod that they were going to be in Super League next season, then yeah, you could... But you'd be able to recruit a team, because there's only so many full-time clubs, there's only so many players. Yeah, so that's my observation on that one anyway.
Yeah, and just final one, that I think Lewis Hall, like you briefly mentioned, he's had a couple of cracking games against us this year. In fairness, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think he could be quite a useful, astute signing. I think he's tough, and he's got great versatility as well. And that's the type of player you need in your squad to cover a wide range of positions, and you don't know who's leaving either. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't need to think about Super League. You just need to ignore Super League. Widnes have got to build a team to win the championship, and whether they do or not is another thing. But ultimately, forget about Super League, forget about anything else. You're building a team to play in the championship in 2025, and you want that team to do as best as it can. All the other things that happen in the background will happen in the background regardless. But the bottom line is on the pitch, you want to be doing well in championship next season.
Yeah. And the last one, James, just quickly, because I have no input on this one. I don't have a clue. You may or may not, but I'll ask anyway. Is there anything happening with the Killshaw investigation, or has it been deemed no further action?
Actually, it was almost as if I knew about this, which I didn't. I did speak to the RFL, and they told me the investigation is still ongoing.
There we go.
That was all that they would tell me.
There we go. So,
well, thanks for all them questions. Keep them coming. And before we let you go, Wakefield away this week, Mike. A tough one. Probably would have been nice to go there off the back of a win. I'm not saying that it puts any pressure on the game, but how do you think it's going to go?
I think we'll be defeated. It'd be silly of me to sit here and say I think we're going to win. I don't, but I think we'll make a good account of ourselves. I think very frustrating afternoon on Sunday, no doubt about it. But you've got nothing to lose. Hopefully Rodri Lloyd, Sam Wilde, and Matty Fozzard come into the mix. Straight away, you're a better team with them 3 players in. No disrespect to who drops out, but you are a better team with them in. And have a go. Let's score some tries. Like we might concede a few, but we want to see us have a go. And you've got to put that result behind you now. If you dwell on that, we'll end up losing a couple more games on the spin. You've just got to park it, move on, and build into that Sheffield game.
Very well said. Right, everyone, thanks for tuning in to another week of the Widnes Rugby Chat. Please do keep your comments coming on the Widnes Rugby League fans Facebook page. Also leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube, wherever you listen, and we'll try and pick them up. But from me and Mike, that's all from this week. We'll see you next time.